What's up YouTube, the Random Outdoorsman is back, and today I'm going to be showing you how I forged this bearded axe from one piece of steel. I'm using the same kind of metal as I did for my last tomahawk. Instead of using two pieces of metal for a bearded axe like most people do, I'm just using one. Here's my piece. I knew that I'd need about 3 to 4 inches to make the eye, then I want about 3 inches for the shaft, and then about a 3 or 4 inch blade, which I will curve that down. Here I am cutting out the piece. It's kind of curved so it'll be easier to bend. I'm not forge welding it because my forge is not quite big enough to get those two pieces in there together. So I'm just having to do one and bend it, which seems a little more difficult actually. Here's my first heating. I started off trying to just bend the metal around, but as I figured out later, that's not how I'd want to do this. I'd actually need to pound out where I was going to make the blade, and that would extend the metal and make it curve. Here you see I got the metal much hotter, and I'm already starting to pound out where I want the blade to be. That will lengthen that side of the blade, and will basically start to turn the metal how I want it to turn. It will also make the metal thinner, which will make it bend more easily. You see it's finally bending a little bit, and I got some flat vice grips to help me hold on to the metal better than my other pliers were. You also see I attached my anvil down a little bit better than last time. I got the metal much hotter this time, and you see I am thinning out where I want the blade to be. That is extending the metal and starting to turn it. And if you watch here carefully, you will see the metal actually start to bend around, which you can see there. The vice grips also help very much, allowing me to grab more surface area, which made it slip less, and also my vice being tacked down with those screws. So I had a good idea of how to get this to bend easier. I took a chisel made for metal, and I pounded a notch here in the back of the blade. And I assumed this would allow me a little bit extra space there where I could bend the metal back, and it would give maybe some room for that extra metal to go to. And as you will see, it worked out exactly as I planned, and it helped a lot. I also started to bend the metal a little bit, which is good. Now I'm just continuing to flatten out the edge, which continues to bend the metal, and then flattening out the middle because it's starting to get kind of thick. Also pounding on the top to bend it over even more. You notice my metal's much hotter in these clips than it was on my last forging project. The reason is because my forge is a new tin can, which is kind of funny. I have a hole cut in the side so I can get the metal right into the middle, and then my shop vac blowing on it. I also make sure to keep plenty of charcoal on it. I used about a 15-pound bag for this whole project. Here's a little coffee can. You see that hole in the side, got my metal in it, and a bunch of holes in that can. And there's my shop vac. Now I decided to start forging the eye. I just wanted to kind of beat on the metal a little bit and give it that more forged look, but I don't really need to flatten it out much here. I'm continuing to just flatten this out a little bit, give it that forged look like I said before. The eye is really not that difficult because I want it to be thicker for this project, but still want to give it that pitted look. See, I'm also using my framing hammer, not my sledgehammer. I am continuing to work on closing the eye. Just want to make sure it's hot enough that I can complete it all in one wrap, all in one heat. And talk about my choice of hammers. Last time I used the, I think, 2-pound small sledgehammer that you see laying there. If you watch my other video, you know. And I learned from some blacksmiths online that you might not want to use a heavier hammer when you're first starting out forging. I didn't really get it, but I was trying to use my lighter one, and I discovered that it actually worked a little bit better because I could wield it easier and really control where my strikes were. It also focused the force over less surface area. Here, almost finishing the eye. A little less time this time because I'm getting the metal hotter, figuring out how to use the hammer better, and also probably because of the lighter hammer, easier to hold. Now that I have the eye closed, I need to go back to finishing the bend in this bearded axe part. This would have been much easier if I could forge weld. I cannot yet. Obviously, it's easier to just forge weld the two pieces together and then work the blade down from there than having to bend it and work with all the places that it twists and kind of bunches up. But it's working out okay. I do with what I have and what I can do. Here I am trying to finish up the eye. I'm not going to get it completely done on this one. I have no idea why I'm pounding on it like that. I guess I thought it would close it. It did not. So I grabbed my 1-inch steel rod, fits in there pretty well, but I want it to be larger than the 1-inch steel rod, so I kind of pound on the metal, and what that does, it causes it to rebound off and widen the eye. Not realizing it's not closed enough though, so I'm trying to center it, and then I'm going to look at it and realize it's not closed all the way. Look at that. So I try to roll it over a little bit more. You'll see how I fix this later. Still working on finishing the blade. I got it hot enough this time. I think it was almost melting because it had this glassy sheen to it, which is good. I can get my metal pretty hot. I don't know if that's what that means, but it was very easy to work with at this point. Still thinning out the blade. Had a lot of trouble with that because of how thick it is, but at least it's bending well. So I'm using the different parts of the horn there to get it to bend over, trying to even out where the edge will be and flatten out back in the inside of the turn so it's not lumpy back there. Still trying to finish up this accursed turn here. Just flattening out the middle parts where the metal has started to widen because of flattening on the edge, and still trying to just taper the edge down where it will be reasonable to sharpen. Going to see if I can finish the eye on this heat. Got it very hot this time, bending very easily for me. Actually a little bit too easily, getting misshapen now. So I have to pound it out on the horn. It's nice to have that to widen up the eye. Working out pretty well for me. Still going to use that metal rod, try to fit it in there. Barely fit, but fit enough. Almost finishing the eye on this attempt. Get the rod in there so it won't become misshapen, and try to finish closing the eye and straightening it up. Move the camera angle because of the sun. Just didn't want the camera right there. It was kind of glaring. And flattening out the edge here because it's become too rounded. It also had some parts that stuck out way too much, accomplishing that very well. A little bit more about how I attached my anvil down. I took some long nails, attached them to that small piece of scrap plywood I had laying around, and heated them up with the blowtorch so they wouldn't snap, and so they'd bent them around the different parts of the anvil, and it seemed to hold very well. You see with the axe there, had to straighten out, the blade got bent a little bit. This is my last heat, just trying to get the edge pounded down a little bit more. If I did it much more, it would bend too far around. I wanted to point one thing out, a mistake I made, which was that after you get done forging on a piece of metal, you're supposed to heat it a couple times again to relieve some of the stresses caused from pounding on the metal, because if I don't do that, it can cause cracks later. I didn't do that. Hopefully it won't cause cracks, but make sure to look that up so you don't have your work ruined because of just not heating it a couple times. Now just take it over the belt sander here. I'm taking off some of the scale because I want it to look nice. I like it when some of the scale's taken off and you can see the pits and then also the polished metal. Once I got the scale off, I just wanted to get the metal down to a rough edge before I took it to my whetstones. Got done with my power sanding, got the whole blade a little too hot, it turned it yellow, and then also got the one part on the edge very hot. It went through all the colors, which is not good. Hopefully that will sand off when I go to my whetstones. As I got done sharpening on the whetstone, starting to make the handle here, I just traced it and then cut in on this piece of oak dowel rod I had, and about to see how this works. I basically chiseled down to where I had it cut with the coping saw, just like I do for the bushcraft baton, and then use my vise there just to pound the piece of wood into the handle and also cut a split in it with the coping saw. And finally, I cut a wedge out of some pine, put it in there with some Elmer's wood glue. I'm not very good at these handles, but we'll see how this one works out in the future test video. So, as I finished it up, I wrapped some electrical tape around the handle here and closer up by the head. I just think that makes it look cooler. I cut off the top here where I had my wedge and glue in, and then sanded it down to make it a little less rough. Looks pretty cool. And got it sharpened up. Didn't show any of the sharpening, but it is pretty sharp. So that's all for today's video. Make sure to stay tuned for our test video. Like, subscribe, and comment. Tell us what you want to see next. And make sure to subscribe because we're going to be having more forging videos, more all kinds of videos, and you do not want to miss those. Happy trails.